Well, let's speak now to Anissa Bilal, who's a senior research fellow and a strategic advisor on international humanitarian law at the Geneva Academy, and she joins us now on Skype from there. Anissa, from an international humanitarian law perspective, given the level of violence, is Mexico considered to be at war with the drug cartels?
Well, for many years now, there has been discussion indeed on how to classify this situation of armed violence under international humanitarian law, or in other words, the law of armed conflict. There are two criteria to be applicable in this situation. First, the level of violence, the level of casualties. And the second element to take into consideration is the level of organizations of the armed gangs involved. Many scholars, many different institutions do believe that in Mexico, at least for certain cartels like the Jalisco cartel New Generation, and to a certain extent also the Sinaloa cartel, these elements have been fulfilled. So it means that the law applicable in armed conflict situation would have its application in Mexico.
And from the state side, then, does the Mexican government itself, does the government accept that it is at war?
Well, it doesn't accept it really openly. There have been discussion also with the Mexican government taking place. The Mexican government wants to decide the legal framework applicable, and of course it's right. It can be domestic law, which is first applicable there, and then human rights law, which is the second layer of application, and then it may or may not accept that international humanitarian law is applicable in Mexico. If it does, though, it will imply that certain rules will on targeting will be applicable there, and as well as the rule of proportionality in attack and rules of on detention. So Mexico is a sovereign state and has the right to decide which framework is applicable, although once it is decided, it has to obey, of course, and it has to respect the rules applicable in this case.
Well, seeing as this violence is continuing to escalate, and we've just seen these huge number of deaths just in the last day, what are Mexico's options here? I mean, could declaring it a war potentially actually hamper its response in terms of trying to crack down on some of these drug cartels?
I don't think it could, and it would. International humanitarian law, as well as human rights law, give ample possibility to states involved in armed conflict to address the situation of armed violence. It has the right to target a military objective. It has the right to take the life of someone who is a threat to others, but it needs to do so in accordance with certain principles, the principle of necessity and proportionality. But it doesn't limit the action of a state. What the state cannot do, though, is to pick and choose which norms from whatever legal framework, being the domestic, the international one. And because this creates a vagueness, and also may also create situations where the victims do not exactly know what the government is allowed to do. And so I do not believe that by categorizing this situation as an armed conflict, it would limit the action of the Mexican government to address the situation of armed gang violence, which is a very complex one. So it might be the case that the better framework is the one which is elaborated at the domestic level.
Anissa Bilal there, a senior research fellow and strategic advisor on international humanitarian law at the Geneva Academy. Thank you for your thoughts, Anissa.
Thank you.